Welcome, everyone. Welcome in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. We're going to give people just a minute to join the webinar, but we appreciate you being on with us this evening, wherever you're tuning in from. So we're just going to give people just a moment to hop on and join us, but thanks for being here. If you're just joining us, thank you so much for being here for our new student housing application webinar. We're going to give folks just one more minute to hop on the Zoom, but we really appreciate you all being here tonight. Alrighty. So it's slowing down of people coming in. So I want to welcome everyone again to the Housing and Residence Life webinar for new student housing application for the upcoming 2025-2026 academic year. Just some general housekeeping for Zoom while we're waiting for others to join us. We will have this full hour to have this webinar. As you can see, it is recorded, so we are planning on uploading the recording to the YouTube channel and posting it on our website later this week. So if you want to review anything that we're, saying tonight, or if you have anyone that would like to watch later, we will be posting that on our website. We have a number of staff here this evening that are here to answer your questions. So both the chat and the Q&A are open to any questions that you may have. And then we will also have an opportunity at the very end of the webinar to answer questions out loud for the recording. So if we don't answer your question right away, we will get to it at the end. And then just lastly, if there's other questions that are a little bit longer or maybe more personal that you would like us to answer, we'll have our contact information at the very end, and you can reach out to us at any time, and we'd be happy to get you the information. So again, welcome for those who are able to join us this evening. I'm going to just post the agenda up at the beginning. So welcome. We'll do some quick introductions of our staff, and then we will jump right into the webinar. So we'll talk about the residency requirement. We'll talk about the housing application process for the upcoming academic year, which will include the timeline, every step that you have to go through to complete the application. And then we'll also talk through some of the exemption eligibility in that process as well. And then for those of you who haven't been able to come to campus, we'll also do an overview of all of our residence halls and the different communities. So you can kind of get a little peek about what that is going to be all about. And then we'll finish up with a look ahead and kind of some exciting things to look forward to in the months ahead of move-in. And then again, lastly, we will do a Q&A at the end session. So again, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box below, and we will definitely get to that at the very end. So some quick introductions. I can go first. My name is Kaylee MacDonald. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Associate Director of Housing Assignments and Communications here at Housing and Residence Life. So I manage the team that runs all of the application processes, all of our room changes, and all of the great things that we are presenting tonight. And I will pass it over to Shmir James.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shamira James. I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator for Housing and Residence Life. I handle all of our communication as it relates to processes. So you've been getting my emails kind of on a weekly basis. I also handle all of our marketing efforts, both kind of internally and externally. And I also run our social media pages. So make sure you're following us on Instagram. I will hand it over to Lauren Stowe.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren. I'm one of the housing assignment specialists. I help coordinate student housing placements and work closely with students and campus partners to support the assignment process and make sure everything runs smoothly from application to move-in. And I will pass it on to Sam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Lewis. I'm the other housing assignment specialist. Pretty similar role as Lauren. We kind of just separate depending on process and whatnot. So yeah.
And then we have one more staff member here with us tonight, Brian, and I will kick it over to you and we can get us started.
All right, good evening, good morning. I don't know if there's any good mornings at this time zone. It depends where folks are, but so glad to have you here with us tonight. My name is Brian Ensel. I'm the Executive Director of Housing and Residence Life here at American University. So obviously housing and all of these components are within my portfolio, as well as the residential life lens, which once students and Eagles become with us on campus, that's where our folks in residential life really kick it off and working with our students daily. So kind of seeing behind the scenes, and this is the dream team that makes all of those things happen. So I want to talk a little bit about our housing requirement now, kind of to kick it off, because I know this is a conversation that's come up quite a bit, specifically when we've been on the road. Our enrollment folks and admissions folks have been on the road and really talking a lot about this. And this is something we're very excited about. And this is something that honestly was kind of a long time coming. And we've made a lot of advances in order to kind of make this a possibility. So starting with this 2025 cohort, the incoming first-year students will be required to live on campus for their first 2 years. There's a lot of data that goes behind as to why that decision was made. And so I can I'll point to our website for a lot of this, as a lot of those points are there, as well as right here. So spoken from true research-based, looking at student success, the amount of time that students are in residence, as well as with their cohorts, with their floors, interacting in our spaces. We've done a lot of work across our housing and residential life portfolio to not only upgrade, but enhance and make sure that it creates the best possible scenario for all of our students that are living with us on campus. And we've taken all of the consideration and feedback from students and utilize that as we develop and build out these renovation projects. And so a lot of money and time and intentionality, I would say, has really been placed into making sure that these spaces are ideal for where students want to be. A lot of research shows students who are on campus, GPA are higher. They'll graduate on time, and they really develop that sense of community a lot more. I think that we look at transitions and, going from home, maybe far away, maybe a little bit closer, regardless of what it is, we want to make sure that there's those levels of support kind of all across the way. And I talked about that, our residence life folks, and how really they are the ones, once we get your students involved and in the buildings, they're the ones that really are there to answer questions and provide any type of guidance 24/7 around the clock. Our peer institutions, obviously, we're in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, for those of you who are learning some vernacular, as I was when I first came here. So there's area institutions serving, obviously, Georgetown. We have George Washington, Howard, Johns Hopkins, Marymount Catholic, Trinity Washington. They all have similar structured on-campus living experiences, and their outcomes have been very positive. And these are folks that we have worked with and collaborated with and done a lot of focus groups around, kind of learning what their successes were and maybe where some of their limitations were, so that we can make sure that we're best prepared for this moving forward. Stronger community. You'll hear us talk a lot about community and care. For the first time, students, this is something new. You may have never lived with somebody else before. You may have folks from diverse backgrounds and cultures that you're living with. You want to make sure that you're supported, as well as kind of being part of that Eagle community. And it really is community from the day you step on campus, from the way we come with orientation, from kickoff, as well as the whole entire move-in experience, and then right into welcome week and orientation. We want to make sure that we're providing support and flexibility. So we are and do have some exemptions available. And those are all listed on our website. And I know we'll probably, put some links out there. I'll be willing to do that. As far as to those exemptions. So we want to make sure that the policy works for everyone. And then looking at the living spaces, obviously, I talked a lot about, we've invested a lot into upgrading. We just did a brand new renovation in our dining hall, our terrace dining room, or TDR. That is a great gathering space for students. I know that I like to spend some time down there because a real life experience. I was standing at the waffle iron and I looked to the student as I was waiting. It's kind of like the elevator concept of what do you say when you're in this room? I looked to them, I said, "Hey, do you live on campus?" They said, "Yes." I said, "Tell me about your experience." And so I think those are the ways and areas that we're trying to get out and about just beyond the residence halls. But that's an example of, you never know kind of who you can run into and speak about their experience. And then safety and support. We live in the DC metropolitan area, so I know this is something that does come up quite a bit, and we do receive a lot of questions about this. Students living on campus benefit from that safety and support. We're in the area called Northwest DC, and so if you were to look at maps, it is an extremely safe and secure portion of Washington, DC. We have 24-hour coverage around the clock from a professional staff member who is master's level trained. We have resident assistants, which are kind of those community advocates that are on the floor and the eyes and ears and the mentors for residents, as well as operations that go around our desk. We have a security program, as well as all of our buildings are locked 24/7. And so students will need to use their AUID to get into all of our buildings. Additionally, we have 2 extra layers of support every single night. We have a community director on call and we have a senior administrator on call. And those systems are in place so that we have designated support just for those students that are living within the residential communities.
All right, now we will jump straight into our application process.
Yeah, let's take a look at the timeline. So the first on our timeline has already passed. It's going to be April 2nd. It was when the housing application opened to all students who have committed and claimed their AU account. And the next date to know is going to be, let's do it, and May 7th. That is our priority deadline to submit. Following that, roommate matching will open May 12th at noon. This is an optional, but it's highly encouraged. You're able to view other students' community profile within your community and find a compatible person. And then our following is going to be May 16th. Your selection time slots will be released in your housing portal. And then the June 2nd through June 9th will be that room selection period where you guys select the actual room. And after June 11th, we'll start doing our manual assignments. And then up until June 18th, you'll have the ability to self-swap and move around the residence halls depending on your community and all that. And June 20th is when you'll get your move-in time slots for when you'll be moving in late August. And that will be your move to AU. So the first step of the application is to complete the application. As I stated, it opened on April 2nd at 12. This kind of just confirms your contact information, emergency contact information, and then you can fill out your roommate matching questionnaire. That's like, oh, I like the room cold at night. I am a night owl, all that stuff. And then you'll also be prompted to do a couple more things like signing the housing license agreement. Reverse noise. And then it'll have a couple of prompts for you. Whether you're interested in GradGuard renter's insurance, housing accommodations through ASAC, gender-based housing considerations through CDI, all gender housing preference, theme community interests, and all female housing interests. And then Lauren will talk a little bit more about those all gender housing preferences for us.
All right, let's talk about housing options related to gender identity and expression, specifically all gender housing and gender-based housing considerations, or GBHC for short. So all gender housing is an option that kind of allows students to live with Others who have also opted into this housing type or type of housing, regardless of gender, gender identity, gender expression, or sex assigned at birth. This means, for example, that friends of different genders can choose to live together if they all opt into this option. There's no separate application for this. Just make sure to opt in on the housing application if this is something you're interested in. And if it turns out you change your mind later on, you can opt out before your assignments are finalized in the same like space in the housing application. Whereas gender-based housing consideration is a separate process designed to support students who have specific housing needs related to their gender identity. This could include things like needing access to gender-neutral restrooms, finding a roommate who shares or respects their gender identities, or seeking a housing environment that's affirming for transgender or non-binary students. And if you're interested in the gender-based housing consideration, there's going to be an additional form that you'll need to fill out through the Center for Diversity and Inclusion, or CDI. And after that, CDI and our office will work together to make sure your preferences and needs are considered as we do like the housing placements. And if you're not sure which option is best for you, or you want to talk through it in more detail, both CDI and our team can help support that.
Thank you, Lauren. So now on to step 2, roommate matching. So this opens May 12th at 12 p.m. So this is optional, but is very highly encouraged. So it allows students to search and create roommate groups based on their community profile. You can make roommate groups of 2 up to 4 people. And there's a couple of options to find roommates. You can either view your top matches from that roommate profile questionnaire, seeing, Sarah has an 87% match. Oh, I want to match with her. Or say you did the new fashioned way of finding someone on Instagram or whatever it may be, you can search for them specifically. There are a few road bumps or hiccups we do experience with roommate matching. So first is making sure that your gender classification matches. So if one of you is opted into the all gender housing and the other isn't, you wouldn't be able to match. So either both of you would have to opt in or both opt out. Additionally, you need to be in the same community profile. So if one of you is in honors, university, college, one of our themed communities, you wouldn't be able to see them and do that roommate matching. They would have to be within that community. And the other thing that we get is making sure that you are already in a roommate group. You can't be in 2 roommate groups at once, so you have to leave or delete your previous roommate group to join a new one. And so this is kind of what it'll look like in this little box right here. You'll see all of your information, so your gender, your classification, your community, and then you'll go over to these little buttons. So you have that roommate in mind. You met Sarah on Instagram. Let me search her up. Or you can do your other version and find her, find your matches under the suggested roommates. And when you get to that, you can then invite them to be your roommate. And they can then accept your invitation, and it would look something like this of if you have outgoing requests of who you've asked to be your roommate. And so our third step is room selection. So this is the is going to take place between June 2nd and June 9th. Early decision students will receive time slots on the first days followed by all other students. When you're in the housing portal, you'll be able to see the floor plans that you're of the halls and the rooms that you're looking for. It's important to note that the roommate with the earliest time slot can select the rooms for the entire group. So say Sarah was an early decision student and her time slot was June 2nd at 10 a.m. But my time slot is June 9th at 4 p.m. Sarah would be able to go and select for us, but it's important to make sure that we did complete that roommate matching step, because then Sarah wouldn't be able to select for me as well. This is an imaginary Sarah, if you couldn't tell. And then if you're riding solo, student without a roommate group, you would be able to view the roommate profile of the person who's in that space already. So if the space is half occupied, you can kind of see their information and be like, oh, I want to live with them versus the person down the hall. And this is kind of the steps that would look like. So you would select the location of the hall that you want, so Anderson, and then you can filter by floor. So you say you want to be on the highest floor, or you don't want to walk down all those stairs during a fire drill. And just like you're shopping online, you can add to cart. And once we get to there, we'll be able to then assign our bed spaces. Press that. And then this next part, I really want to make note once again. If you want to live with a specific roommate, you must create and confirm a roommate group with all roommates before completing your room selection. You will not be able to add the missing roommate after selecting. If you do not, the unassigned student will need to select separately when their time slot begins. So like with my Sarah situation, I would have to wait till my time slot on June 9th. And in that period, someone could take that space. So it's really important to do that roommate matching step. And then you confirm, save your booking. And then congratulations, you submitted your application and you can view your booking summary for the next year. And you are all set in that aspect. You have your room for the fall.
All right, so what happens once you select your space in the housing portal? If you receive a time slot to choose your own room, it's really important that you select your space by June 11th. If you don't worry, you'll still get housing. Our team will go ahead and assign you to a space so that your spot is secured within your assigned community. Once you've selected a space, you'll still have some flexibility. You'll be able to self-change your room assignment in the housing portal up until June 18th. That means if you change your mind or see another space open up that you prefer or want to live with a different roommate, you can make that switch on your own. No need to contact us. And then after June 18th, though the self-selection option will close, any changes after that point would need to go through our office. So just keep that timeline in mind as you're making your changes and plans.
Awesome. So we just kind of went through the process of, completing the application, finding a roommate, and selecting a space. Now I want to kind of highlight a couple of things if you are someone that would potentially be interested in looking at an exemption to this residency requirement that we spoke about earlier. So the first thing I want to highlight are the exemption guidelines. So students may apply for an exemption from the residency requirement if they meet any of the following criteria. So first one, very easy. If the student is 22 years of age or older by August 1st of that first year residency requirement. The next one is if you're a student that is married or in a domestic partnership, again, by August 1st. If you are a parent or a legal guardian of a minor that resides with you as the student. This one can be a little bit complicated, so I'll talk about it a little bit more. If the student lives with a parent or guardian at their permanent residence, that's within 25 miles of campus and where the parent or legal guardian has resided for at least 183 days. So that specifically want to call out, if you currently live somewhere, you're living in this residence, you moved there, last January, for example, that would obviously happen. But if you are trying to sign a lease that will start August 1, that would not meet that criteria because you have not been in residence and also would not be in residence when you are submitting your exemption. The students that are studying abroad, if you are studying abroad for a semester, obviously you will be exempt for that term if you hold any sort of veteran status. And then the last one that I'll kind of asterisk for us to get back to a little bit later is an exemption based off of a disability requirement or sincerely held religious beliefs. So similarly, the exemptions do have a specific timeline that you need to submit all of your requests and documentation. So again, want to highlight the application did open on April 2nd at noon for students that had committed to AU and have claimed their account. So that's kind of the first way to start to submit the exemption process or to start that process. The next date, very similar to our application, there is a priority deadline for religious and ASAC, which is our Academic Support and Access Center accommodations and exemptions. So this is in line with kind of our application priority deadline. And again, it's a priority deadline to make sure that we can provide you an answer in the timely fashion. The next deadline is on June 1st. So all of those other exemption guidelines that I outlined, those are all going to be due June 1st. So if you fall into any of those categories, you're over 22, you are in a domestic partnership, that would be your deadline to submit all of your documentation. And then lastly, June 30th, if you do submit an exemption request, we will respond to you by June 30th to make sure that you have enough time, to kind of take that response and to continue in your process if you are living off campus or living on campus. One thing I do want to highlight is that any student that is admitted to the university after June 1st will have 96 hours to complete the application and their exemption request. So we understand that some students may not be able to abide by this specific timeline here, but we do want to give that 96-hour period to kind of complete all of the necessary paperwork and the application so you have time. So we can also provide you a response in a timely fashion. Unfortunately, after that time, exemption requests will not be considered. So please make sure if you're considering an exemption that you're completing everything on this timeline. The process for requesting exemption is fairly straightforward. So it is all located in our housing portal. So immediately following the completion of the housing application, you will be prompted to, submit the exemption or continue with the application process like Sam outlined. And I want to highlight that each specific exemption does require specific documentation that should be submitted. And each of the document pieces that are required for the exemptions are outlined in the portal. So if you have a specific, if you are 25 miles from campus, we will outline the specific documents that we need in order to review that request. And then again, exemption requests will be reviewed and responded to within that 30 days of submission. So you'll know pretty quickly if your exemption request is approved or not. And then, like I mentioned, disability or religious exemption requests, they do have a slightly separate timeline and a different request process that I can highlight just over in the little blue area on the screen. So any medical or disability related requests will be submitted through the Academic Support and Access Center's 3-step accommodation request process. So ASAC reviews all housing accommodations as well as exemptions. So if you have anything that needs to, a need for carpet-free rooms, a need for a single, a need for an emotional support animal, those will all go through the Academic Support and Access Center. But then in addition to that, all of the exemption requests that are medical or disability related also go through their office. And then their office they're the experts. So they're going to review and determine if the exemption is approved or if a reasonable accommodation can be made on campus. So they will be the ones making that determination. And we work very closely with their office to make sure that you as a student have exactly what you need to reside on campus. And then in terms of religious exemption requests, these are all submitted through our K Spiritual Life Centers process. So again, they process all kind of accommodation and religious requests. So, think housing accommodations, dietary accommodations, any sort of accommodations needed around religious holidays for class schedules, that would all go through the K Spiritual Life Center. And the university chaplain reviews and begins an interactive process with students to determine, again, if the exemption is approved or if an alternative arrangement can be made in on-campus housing. And just to kind of give you an overview of what the exemption submission process would look like from the student's point of view. So again, upon completion of the application, you'll be prompted with what the next steps are. You'll be able to select, do I want to see the upcoming application steps or do I want to view the housing exemption process? From there, you'll again select from the different exemption types. Again, all of the exemption requirements that I highlighted earlier are prompted on the screen, and you'll be able to select and submit the exemption type that you are interested in. And then on that specific screen, you'll be able to see, what the exemption is, select the type, and then you'll be able to view the specific documentation that you need to upload. So for this example, if you're studying abroad, we simply just need a screenshot of the confirmation of that study abroad program. And again, we will kind of confirm that participation with our AU Abroad office, but just kind of to provide the documentation up front. And then once your application or your exemption is completed, you'll be kind of, you'll see a screen here that it is submitted, it's pending review, and it'll kind of go through the next steps of what you can expect from our office. So again, it's kind of in two boats. So either your exemption is going to be approved. All students will receive communication through their AU email. So I know it's a new email account to look at, so make sure you're checking that. And if you had at some point selected a housing assignment, it will be canceled on your behalf since the exemption is approved. And then no additional action will be needed from you for the current academic year, 2025-2026. Any exemption requests that are denied, again, they'll be notified by their AU email, and we do encourage the student to select their space, or we will assign them during that manual assignment period, and the housing charges would remain on your student account. And then one thing I do want to highlight before we kind of transition on to the next section is, if you are interested in being exempt from the second year of the residency requirement, so for that sophomore year, you would still need to submit another exemption request for the following year, because we don't want to assume that you want to be exempt both years. Maybe you met some people on campus that you are really excited to live with your sophomore year. We don't want to just assume that you don't want to live on campus, but that exemption process will be very, very similar to this one, and will begin during our spring 2026 returning student application process. So you'll receive emails and information about that as that application opens up in the spring.
All right, perfect. So now we're going to talk about the residence hall themselves. We're going to kind of talk about what they have in them as far as like facilities and some of the amenities that they offer. I know I got a question in the chat about what kind of amenities you can expect in the hall. So we're going to talk about that for this segment. So first, we're going to look at kind of like the campus as a whole. When you first come to campus, there's a lot of different buildings and a lot of different directions you can go in. I'll start, I believe, on South Side, and then we'll just go from there. South Side is where most of our first year students will live, just because that it has the most halls that allow first year students to live in. So between Anderson, Letts, Centennial, and Roper, those would be some of the options you can choose to live in. Anderson, Centennial, and Letts are connected all together. So it's like one big building, even though they all are separate. And Anderson, fun fact, is where our office is located. So Anderson residents have kind of like a fast pass to our office whenever they need any type of questions answered. Then following that, sorry, I need to move this box out the way. Following that will be East Campus. Unfortunately, East Campus is not available your first year to you, but it will be available for your second year. These will have our suite style-esque apartments. And these are 3 buildings that encompass the entire East Campus. And then next is, I believe, Northside Campus. Northside is another option where a lot of our incoming first year students live. You have an option of 3 buildings over there, Leonard, McDowell, and Hughes. Those buildings are also connected, actually. And there's also another building on Northside, Casella Hall, which is, again, not an option for y'all, but it is on that side. And then last but certainly not least, kind of on the other side of campus, we have Nebraska Hall and Frequency Apartments. Again, those are for our upper division students. And Frequency is not pictured on here, but it is in Tenleytown, which is accessible via the AU shuttle. So that's kind of like all of our residence halls where they span across campus at a bird's eye view, quite literally, because of the map. We can go to the next one. So when we look at what the residence halls kind of encompass within them, just some general things that are applicable across all of our residence halls. All floors are going to be co-ed. We do offer one all-female floor, and if you're interested in living in that, you can select that within your housing application. But all of our residence halls will have a kitchen, community lounge, and laundry facilities on each floor. This is very different from, back in my day when I was in college, and all of those amenities were in kind of like the basement in one central place. Here at AU, these are on each floor. It kind of helps create that that just accessible feeling and like that comfortability within each floor, so everyone has the same accesses to these spaces. And all of these spaces within the traditional halls are upkept by our lovely housekeeping staff. So when you see them around throughout your time at AU, please always say thank you to them because they're very kind and very sweet. They're also kept by, you all being in community with each other and honoring the rules that, your RA will set out for you within that first week of you getting here. And if you want to see any of these halls, if you are unable to make it to campus, you can always look at the virtual tours on our website. They will not only have tours of the actual rooms itself, which I know you all want to see, but they also have tours of all of these spaces, like, the common rooms, the lounges, even the lobbies in some cases. So you can really get the best, kind of like the best view of what these spaces look like. And you can really truly imagine yourself in them. So they're really helpful. I really would recommend. Next slide. So the most common room type that we have is going to be your traditional style double room. These rooms come with 2 sets of furniture because obviously they are doubles. And more often than not, in all of our traditional style halls, you'll have this built-in wall of storage. It comes with, closets, drawers, multiple cubby spaces, and just the most amount of storage you could need as a college student. They're very, very nice. The only difference is that in Roper, which is where our Roper Hall theme community will live, instead of a built-in wall of storage, you'll have a separate wardrobe and drawers, but still tons of storage in both of those options. And in these 2 renderings, what you're looking at on the screen right now are 3D renderings. These are different ways that you can set up the room to allow for more space, but you'll see that as we get later into the process and later throughout the summer, you'll see different things that you can purchase to kind of change up the way you set up your room. But this is what that traditional style double would look like. And then the other option that is available in Centennial Hall, this is our suite style option. So kind of the same concept, you'll get 2 sets of furniture per each roommate. The only difference is that this room is connected by a bathroom that is shared by both sides of the suite. So it has double sinks and then a toilet and a shower. And then within the rooms themselves, you'll get a desk, a chair, a bookshelf, and instead of a wardrobe, I do believe there's just a closet in the room. The biggest difference, obviously, is that this room option does offer your own bathroom, which I know sounds nice because we've all heard maybe horror stories about the communal bathrooms in college. But I will speak for myself here. When I first got into college, I was not equipped to know how to clean my own bathroom, nonetheless, a bathroom that I was going to share with 3 other people. So while I know this is tempting and it seems very private, I just, encourage you to kind of look ahead and think about what you can keep on your plate. But of course, if this is an option that you can select when we do open up that room selection period. So that is what you can expect in our halls, just kind of as a general bird's eye view of what we have.
And just want to highlight, all of our rooms most of our rooms are double occupancy at this stage. But just wanted to highlight, we are offering the opportunity for students to have what are called double as singles. So these are our double occupancy spaces that only have 1 resident. So this is, to provide just more variety for students to choose from. If someone was interested in a single space, they have this option. It is open, something that we have been trying out for this year, and it's open to all class levels. So we've offered this to our sophomore and upper division students already, and have had a lot of interest in this, but we're hoping to offer this just as much for the first year students as well. So during the selection process, students will be able to search for specific floors and see rooms that are labeled as doubles as singles, as the room type. Obviously, because our room selection is already randomized, it kind of creates that lottery system built into it. So it is first come, first serve through that room selection process. And the big thing that I want to highlight here is that true single occupancy spaces will still be held and prioritized for students with an accommodation need. So any students that go through the Academic Support and Access Center's housing accommodation process and is approved for a single room, they will still have access to single spaces because, in order to live on campus, they need those spaces. But we just wanted to offer up another option for students that may be interested in living alone with these doubles as singles. And now I'll transition it to Lauren to speak about some of our residential communities.
Right. So Now we're going to shift gears and talk about some of our residential communities available to first-year students. One of those is our all-female housing community. This is an opt-in living option specifically for students who identify as female and are looking for a residential experience alongside other female identifying peers. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can indicate it on your housing application, kind of similar to opting into the all-gender housing. It'll be a little checkbox. It's also important to note that students in all-female housing can still participate in other programs like living learning communities as long as they get confirmation from their program that it's okay to live outside of its designated building and floor. For the 2025-2026 academic year, the all-female housing will be located in Hughes Hall. And another residential community we're excited to highlight is Roper Hall Community. Roper Hall Community was established in 2020 by students. Roper was created as a space to explore identity and culture and community with others. Since then, it has grown into a vibrant and inclusive living environment designed to support students socially, personally, and academically. The goal is to foster a sense of belonging and connection for everyone who calls it home. What sets Roper apart is that it's open to students of all class years, first years, and returning students alike. Unlike some living learning communities you'll hear about later, Roper intentionally removes restrictions to make community living accessible to all. In fact, it's model we've used to shape our other themed housing options. If you're interested in joining the Roper Hall community, you can select it directly in your housing application. Also similar to the all-female housing, you're also welcome to reach out to Shy Prentice, the Community Director for Belonging and Basic Needs, who's a great resource if you have any questions or want to learn more about this community. And as an added bonus, Roper Hall is being renovated this summer, and a video preview of the updates will be available by the end of the month, so you can see some of the updates that are coming out this summer. And going on to some of our theme communities. So the First Flight floor is a supportive and enriching community specifically designed for first-generation college students, meaning those who are the first in their families to attend a four-year college or university. Living in this community gives students the opportunity to navigate college life alongside others who share that experience, while also receiving tailored resources and support to help them thrive socially, academically, and personally. It's also open to all students of all class levels, and for the upcoming year, it will be located in Leonard Hall. And finally, Equals in Community. Another option is Equals in Community, which is an inclusive and affirming residential space for LGBTQIA+ students and their allies. This community provides a safe, supportive environment where students can be their authentic selves, build meaningful relationships, and engage in conversations and programs that center around identity, inclusion, and connection. Like First Flight, Equals in Community is open to all class levels, and it will be housed in McDowell Hall for the upcoming academic year.
And here's just a quick little overview of all of our theme communities, our living learning communities, and all that. I know we have someone from Lincoln Scholars in here, so you can see that on here. It's going to be in Hughes Hall. So this web information should be on our website and all that, but if you just want to take a brief look at it, so you can see the different options that you'll have.
All right. So just wanted to take a moment to kind of, there's a lot of steps between now when you select your space and when you actually move in. So we kind of want to kind of let you know what you can look forward to in kind of the coming months. So one of the first things is, thinking about personalizing your room. So some different ways you can personalize your room are through bed loft, fridge rentals, and XL bed requests. So the first thing, bed lofts. You can rent a bed loft through your AU housing portal starting right after room selection through August 1st. And we have a very, very hardworking team that will work to get those installed before you move in. And one of the things I like to note is that we don't allow any kind of like risers or stilts on beds that are not provided by AU, but the beds do allow you to raise and lower, I think, a pretty significant amount. on its own. So if you kind of want to see what that would look like, we do have a couple of videos and images on our Instagram if you want to see what the kind of raised and lowered bed looks like versus what a lofted bed would look like. The next thing is fridge rentals. So students can bring their own mini fridge up to 4.5 cubic feet. If you don't want to drag a fridge all the way from home, you can get a rental from our partner My Fridge Rentals. They offer both the micro fridge, which is a microwave mini fridge combo, as well as just the mini fridge. Do like to highlight that if you want the microwave in your room, this is the only option because of the way the power is distributed in the unit. But if you don't care about the microwave and you want to bring your fridge from home, all of the floor lounges have a microwave and have a kitchen in them. So you can just pop down the hall and make your popcorn and do it that way instead of making it in your room. And then all of the rental information is available on our website. I'm not sure if the rentals for fall semester are open yet, but they typically open up early June when you can start to put that rental in, and we work directly with their team to get those installed in the space before you move in. And then the last thing is XL bed requests. So I know I saw a comment in the chat about what size are our mattresses. So if you look on our website, I do believe we have the kind of what our mattresses are size. So our typical mattress is 84 inches long. And if you do a quick Google search, that technically does mean that it is an XL bed, but that is kind of our standard across campus. But if you are over 6'3", you can request an even larger mattress, but what we consider an XL bed starting on July 1st. So I believe those end up being 87 inches long. So anyone taller than 6'3" can go in their housing portal and request that extra large mattress starting on July 1st. You just need to submit documentation with proof of your height. So that can be, your driver's license. It can be a doctor's note, something that just kind of proves that you meet the height requirements. But those are reviewed and evaluated on a first come, first serve basis. So that's why we kind of set that date a little bit later on to kind of even the playing field for everyone that may be very tall. And then if an XL bed is unavailable when you request it specifically, you'll be put on a wait list. So if someone doesn't need it or decides just to go without, you'll be the next on the list and we'll have that installed in your room. And then probably the topic that people are most excited about is move-in. So we have advertised our first year and transfer move-in dates on our website. So that will take place between Saturday, August 16th and Monday, August 18th. I would like to highlight that request for early move-in, which is that Saturday, are reviewed by our office on a rolling basis once we do those time slots in June. And just note that not all requests may be approved. We do have quite a few programs and different reasons why people need to come to campus on that Saturday, so they will receive priority. And then we do ask that if you don't need to come on Saturday, that you experience our full Move to AU experience on that Sunday and Monday. And again, like we mentioned earlier, move-in time slots are assigned to students on June 20th. So pretty much following your housing selection period, we will be assigning those time slots. So we'll be able to understand, when you're moving in, what time, make your flight plans. And then typically later in the summer, we will have a full move-in webinar that lets you know what the traffic flow looks like, what to expect for those days, and kind of what we can provide you kind of in advance, how to pack, things like that. Alrighty, so that kind of wraps up our formal part of the presentation tonight. And I know we've had a lot of questions answered throughout the webinar. So while we kind of search for a couple to highlight for and out loud and for the recording, I want to just again put up our contact information. So we went through a lot of stuff tonight, in addition to the recording that we'll make available later this week or early next. You can always email us at housing@american.edu. We, are happy to answer any of your questions over email. You can also give us a call at 202-885-3370. We're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So if you're giving us a call, keep that in mind that we're on the East Coast, so 9 to 5. We do also have a live chat that runs Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern. So if you have a really quick question that you're just looking for an answer, you can live chat us and you get a response really quickly. So that's great if you're looking for just some quick information. And then, like always, our website is always available at american.edu/student affairs/housing. We have a lot of this information on our website, so I highly recommend that you check that stuff out. And also, Shmir does an excellent job maintaining the website and providing that information at any time. Let's see. Sharing details about transfer housing. So I know this webinar talked a lot about kind of incoming first year housing. Transfers have a slightly separate timeline. So your application will actually open up on May 21st, since that's when we see a lot of transfer applications from admissions start to get accepted and approved through their office. And it's very similar in terms of the application process. You'll be able to, make your roommate slide or roommate profile. You'll be able to select from any of those communities. And then the big thing is that if you are a transfer student, you'll actually self-classify. So you'll be able to identify yourself either as a first year, a sophomore, or an upper class student. And then you'll be able to rank choice your residence halls, and we'll place you within those communities. So you'll be able to kind of have some say into where you want to go, and we'll use your kind of roommate questionnaire in order to place you with the best possible roommate. So question here is participating in the AU Abroad second semester. Will I need to have a roommate for the first semester who's also planning to go abroad that second semester? So the easy answer is nope, you can be with anyone within that kind of community group that we talked about during that roommate matching. But if you are planning on going abroad, it's just a great conversation to have with your roommate, just to say, hey, I'm planning on going abroad. And then we do always have, students, coming back from abroad. And we also have students that are admitted for the spring semester that would kind of fill in your space. So you don't need to pick someone that's going to be also in the program. You can get to know some other people on campus. Some questions about living learning communities. So if you're in a specific program, such as the honors program that shares the floor with, say, the DC Community Impact Scholars, you'll be able to mix amongst themselves. So they're on the third floor of Anderson this upcoming year. That would be kind of an option when you're kind of put into that community profile. You'll all be able to see each other. So honors and DC Impact. Same thing with University College. University College does their seminars. I believe there's about 4 seminars per floor. So you might be able to live with someone in your direct seminar or one of the other kind of 3 seminars that will live on your floor as well. I'm looking through the questions. Student athletes. That's a great question. So student athletes, the question is, do we recommend going through the roommate matching process and room selection, or following coach's guidance? So I would recommend following your coach's guidance. Absolutely complete the housing application. But since, coaches want you to live with people on the team, we want you to kind of follow their guidance, and then you will be able to select your room yourself. So there'll be a kind of section of athletes on the 6th floor of Anderson, but you'll be able to select your kind of individual room once we kind of create your roommate group. Other question here, Lincoln Scholars. So Lincoln Scholars only live with other Lincoln Scholars students just because of the community size and the floor size, that's specifically in Hughes Hall. So they tend to just live together on one singular floor. Question here about an international student move-in. So international students, we work with our International Student and Scholar Services Office, since there are some additional requirements for international students to go through the international student orientation. So as that orientation tends to happen earlier, we will work with them if you need to move in early and make sure you're able to attend all of that programming. Anyone else see a question to call out for?
There was a question in the actual chat about the tiers of traditional housing prices. Yeah, I don't know how to like break that one down.
Yeah, all of our housing rates are listed on our website. It's typically broken out into traditional style, so think the bedroom with the bathroom down the hallway, that is able to, you walk down the hall and look at that bathroom, and then it's broken down into suite style. So think again, room, and then either having the bathroom, in the middle of two rooms, or en suite in a suite style. And then we also have apartment style. So apartment style is typically reserved for upper class students, but that's when you would see certain number of bedrooms with a kitchen and a bathroom and some sort of living space as well. So we kind of break it out into those three different tiers based off of, the amenities that each room provides. Let me skim through any answered questions. So a great question that I can see here is that if you're in a roommate group, do you still sign up for the hall or room that you want? How do you kind of coordinate where you want to live? So that's a great kind of thing to discuss before you go into the room selection. We typically recommend that you have, 2 to 3 choices if you're someone that's, can have a lot, like, any of the residence halls, if you're in a general population, of your hall choice, kind of where you want to live, what floor you want to live on. If you are in one of those living learning communities or in a themed community, obviously your options are going to be a little bit more limited. So have that discussion of, do we want to be closer to the lounge or do we want to be closer to the elevator? Because those kind of, can end up mattering to individuals. So have that conversation before your time slot would open, because you want to make sure that you're kind of ready to go once the time slot opens up. And then, like Sam mentioned, all of our floor plans will be available through the portal. It's not something that we provide in advance, more for just kind of security reasons, but you'll be able to view those floor plans in the portal, kind of be able to select the individual spaces. So you'll be able to see which one is closer to the lounge versus the elevator. Question about kind of roommate sharing. So specifically about the kind of micro fridge unit. So that's again another thing that you want to discuss before move-in. I know for my freshman year when I moved into college way back when, my roommate brought the fridge and I brought the TV. You don't need 2 fridges, and that's kind of something that you can like mutually agree to share. But that also kind of goes along with, any other shared items, pots and pans, things like that, that you might be able to kind of share amongst yourselves. And that's again, reduce your packing list by being able to kind of share some of those larger items, in advance before you move in. Great question here. If a student is approved for an ASAC accommodation, will they still have the ability to select from a group of rooms? So it depends on the accommodation specifically. But if you're approved for, say, a single room through ASAC, that is typically pre-assigned, because we want to make sure that you're in a space that meets all of your accommodation requirements. But if you're, just approved for an emotional support animal, or a temperature adjustment or something like that, you would be able to select your room with the guidance from your disability access advisor. I can see we have some questions here about, selecting a roommate or what happens if you don't have a roommate going into the selection. one of the great things about having self-selection is that, as you're going through it, other students are also going through the process. So they're able to actually see your information and see if you'd be a good fit for them. If at the end of that process, you don't have a roommate, when we do our manual assignments, we will use your roommate profile to assign you a space with someone as compatible as possible. Good question here about how long it takes to get the invitation to complete the housing application. So right now we have a rolling email going out every Wednesday and Friday to invite you to complete the application. So if you deposited today, for instance, you'll receive your email on Friday. So we'll have those going up until that priority deadline, and then we'll continue to send emails to remind you to complete the next steps. So if you haven't gotten anything yet, don't worry about it. You have plenty of time still to complete the application before the priority deadline. And I know our questions are wrapping up, but again, want to just thank you all for being here. I know we're at the final minutes, but again, if you haven't had your question answered, or if you have any other specific questions, please feel free to email us at housinginamerican.edu or give us a phone call. We're really happy to answer any of your questions. And then we do look forward to having you on campus very, very soon in the fall. And it'll be here before you know it. So we're really excited to have you. And thanks for joining us.